Present, sir.
I think Sir has sent a mail today. I think the meeting is going on in that link. Like I think the old link is not valid anymore. Because when I just click that, I see that there are people there and the video call is being recorded. So we'll switch to that meeting link.
Petrol is more of informal way, so I use the term gasoline. Gasoline is a formal way of defining the fuel used in spark ignited engine, and diesel is a fuel that we use in compression ignited engine. Almost 95% of the total demand for the transport sector is met only with these two fuel. So it means these two fuels possess some significant characteristic, distinct characteristic, which makes them unreplaceable, right, by any other fuel. So here I will highlight what is that this fuel possess, which makes them unreplaceable, and they are being used for around 100 years now. Okay, this liquid fuels produced from crude oil. Now, from the combustion perspective, we need to understand molecular composition and molecular structure of this two fuel. So, although we use this two fuel in our vehicle, right, we pay very little attention to molecular composition of the fuel and molecular structure of the components that are present in this fuel. But from the combustion perspective, it is very important to know about that. Okay, so I'll spend time on discussing about the molecular composition, molecular structure. Before that, I will briefly discuss about how gasoline and diesel are produced from a crude oil in a typical refinery plant. It's very important to track the origin of these two fuel to understand the composition. Of course, you know that molecular composition of any fuel depends on the source from which the fuel is produced. So we will briefly discuss about how crude oil gets converted to gasoline and diesel, and then we'll discuss about the molecular composition of these two fuel from the combustion perspective. I'll close this chapter with a brief discussion on the properties, important properties that are relevant for spark ignited and compression ignited applications. Okay, so these are the contents we are going to discuss in this first chapter on role of fuel in engine combustion. So before I start my discussion on the role of fuel in engine combustion, I will briefly introduce the topic, with a brief discussion on what are the parameters that affect performance of an IC engine and pollutants that are formed in an IC engine. So you are also doing research on engine, you work in the automotive industry. So whenever we do engine research, right, whenever we do research on engine, there are two targets primarily. One is to improve the performance, internal combustion engine performance, and the other one is to reduce the pollutants. From the end user perspective, people are bothered only about performance, right? Primarily mileage, right? We want more mileage before we choose a vehicle for a given application. Okay, so performance, as you know, it depends on how much power or torque is produced with how much of fuel that is consumed, and we want a minimum quantity of fuel to be consumed to generate a given power and torque. That is what we define as a better performance. Okay, and other important thing is pollutant. So we want to minimize the pollutants that are emitted from the tailpipe of the engine. This is important not from the end user perspective, because a user of a vehicle never worried about how much a pollutant is emitted from the tailpipe, right? But for the OEM, it's a major worry because there is a legal requirement. Any new vehicle, as you know, it cannot be launched in a market until otherwise criteria pollutants comply with the current norms. So there are legal norms in all the countries across the globe. In India, we have our own legal norm, emission standard you call, right? From April 2020, we are following BS6. Okay, we have actually jumped from BS4 to BS6. So there is a tremendous technology, time and investment that has been spent to reduce the criteria pollutants. Okay, pollutants, as you know, it's an outcome of the combustion phenomena that happens in the engine. So from the OEM perspective, the pollutants need to be minimized or reduced. Then only the vehicle can be launched in the market. So these two are the targets, performance and maximum performance and with minimal pollutant emission. These two are the primary target. So for an IC engine, these two depend upon these four factors: type of the engine that we use, operating conditions, control strategy that is adopted, last but not least, the type of fuel that is used in the engine. So these four are the deciding factors. These four factors affect or influence performance of an IC engine and pollutants that are formed from an IC engine. So what do you mean by engine type? So here I am talking about reciprocating engine. You know, internal combustion engine. I already said that from a combustion perspective, you have two categories. One is external combustion, other one is internal combustion. Gas turbine or steam turbines are external combustion based engines. So here we have internal combustion engine. In internal combustion, you have two options. One is reciprocating, other one is rotary engine. Rotary engines have very limited application. Wankel engine, they are used in race cars. They run at a very high RPM. Okay, of course, there are limitations in the design. Okay, primary limitation is the leakage. Okay, so because of that, it's not commercially successful like a reciprocating engine design. So what category of engine? The engine that we use are predominantly reciprocating engine. In reciprocating engine, you have two basic variants. One is spark ignited, other one is compression ignited. Based on how ignition happens in a spark ignited engine, with the electric spark discharge, the combustion gets started. In a compression ignited engine, based on the compression event, you are raising the fuel air mixture to the ignition temperature. That's why it's called compression ignited engine. So in both spark ignited and compression ignited engine, you have 2-stroke engine and 4-stroke engine based on the engine operating cycle, right? And the number of strokes the piston undergoes. In one engine operating cycle, you have 2-stroke and 4-stroke. 2-stroke, one cycle is completed in 2 strokes of the piston, and in a 4-stroke, one cycle, engine operating cycle is completed in 4-stroke. So based on the engine type, so you have this 4-stroke spark ignited engine, which are predominantly used in passenger car segment as well as 2-wheelers, mopeds, motorcycles. Okay, earlier we were using this 2-stroke spark ignited engine, which is taken over now with 4-stroke spark ignited engine. Any reason? Earlier you would have seen in the motorcycle segment 2-stroke, right? 2-stroke spark ignited.
The power to size, or that ratio is higher in a 2-stroke engine, because we are getting power cycles every once in every 2 cycles of the piston. Whereas in correct, yeah, in a 2-stroke engine, yeah. But whereas in a 4-stroke engine, we are getting our 1 power stroke in 4 rotations, right? Like
4 strokes of the piston, 2 rotations. 2 rotations, 4 strokes.
Correct, yeah.
So this 2-stroke is the most compact and low cost. Okay, so the reason why it is popular, why it was earlier popular, was its cost is very low because simple design. Okay, and now it is discarded almost in the motorcycle segment, primarily because of the mileage. So you know what is the typical mileage given by 2-stroke spark ignited engine and a 4-stroke spark ignited engine. Okay, 2-stroke, it's well below 40 km per liter. Mileage is the fuel that is consumed to cover a given distance. Okay, so 2-stroke engine has been taken over by 4-stroke primarily because 2-stroke engines are known to produce very low mileage. From the end user perspective, they want higher mileage. Okay, because it involves maintenance cost, fuel cost. Okay, so 4-stroke spark ignited engines are predominantly used in motorcycle as well as passenger car segment. 2-stroke is still used in very limited application like motor boats and so on, where long movers, very small engine, okay, used in some off-road applications currently. Then you have this 4-stroke compression ignited engine. It's most versatile IC engine available today. So you can design a 4-stroke compression ignited engine with 3 kilowatt rated power. You can also design a 4-stroke compression ignited engine with 30,000 kilowatt power. You have a wide range of power rating, right, in this category. That's why it is most versatile IC engine available today. So you can design a very small engine as well as a very large engine. Where do you come across this 30,000 kilowatt?
Generator, sir.
Generator
And power plant application like
generator, standalone power plant. Any other engine in mobile application?
Ship industry, sir.
Ship is 2-stroke, not 4-stroke. This 30,000 or 20,000 kilowatt engines are locomotive engine, rail engine, right? They are 4-stroke CI. So this 4-stroke CI is most versatile, and then you have 2-stroke CI. 2-stroke CI engines are marine engine. These engines are also very large engines, okay, very large engines, and in fact you can go and stand inside the engine. They are almost 6 feet height. Stroke is around 6 feet, and bore is also larger. So these are very large engine. They run at very low RPM. Typical running speed is around 100 RPM or so. And so 2-stroke engine has a limited application compared to 4-stroke. So in this course, our primary focus will be on the 4-stroke SI and 4-stroke CI engine. Okay, so based on this category of engine or type of engine, the performance and pollutant formation is going to be dependent on. So this is one of the important parameter. The design of engine and the way it operates is one of the important parameters that affect performance and pollutant formation. The second variable is operating condition. What do you mean by operating condition? At what speed and load the engine runs? This is going to decide the engine performance and pollutant formation. Engine cannot run best across all speed and all possible speed and load condition. Only at a certain speed and load range, you will have best outcome from the engine. You would have seen in your odometer that you have a green range, right? Wherein it mentions that you will get a better mileage if you run the engine within that. Okay, so you have operating speed and load that is going to affect the performance of the engine. It also affects the pollutant levels that are emitted from the tailpipe. So operating condition is again one of the variables that affect engine performance and pollutant. The third third parameter is the control strategy. You know, any engine has a control unit, electronic control unit, which has a closed loop control system. It monitors or senses the operating variables continuously and then tune the variables so as to get the best outcome. For example, in a spark ignited engine, generally this fuel air equivalence ratio is closely monitored by the engine control unit because you have a very narrow range of fuel air equivalence ratio in a spark ignited engine. Generally, I'll talk more about this parameter equivalence ratio as we move on. But as you know, this spark ignited engine run in a very close margin of equivalence ratio, 0.9 to 1.2. One is the stoichiometry. Okay, so it runs close to stoichiometric proportion of fuel air equivalence ratio. So your control unit has to monitor continuously the equivalence ratio, operating equivalence ratio, and it has to adjust fuel proportion and air proportion such that you are maintaining a closer value of equivalence ratio in this range. Okay, in a CI engine, so this is for spark ignited engine. In a CI engine, fuel injection timing is continuously monitored by the control unit, and it has to be optimized based on the engine operating condition in terms of speed and load. So this is one of the important variables that needs to be checked by the control unit so as to get the best outcome from the engine in terms of maximal performance with minimal pollutant emission. So you have a control strategy, and that is going to affect the performance and pollutant emission. Of course, you have to ensure that your control unit is basically ensuring that the engine is running under optimal or tuned conditions so as to get the better performance and minimal pollutant emission. So these three variables affect performance and pollutant, but here in this chapter, our focus is on fuel type. Apart from these three variables, the type of the fuel and its characteristic, type of the fuel and its fuel characteristics is going to affect engine performance and pollutant emission. So the fuel, as I said, we use in engines, internal combustion engines, are gasoline in a spark ignited engine, diesel in a compression ignited engine. So these two basic variants are fueled with gasoline in SI and diesel in CI. That is how it is for almost 100 years now. These two fuels possess some distinct characteristics. So we are going to spend some time in this chapter 1 to understand more about this fuel from the combustion perspective. Now, to say briefly, these two fuels possess opposite characteristics as I have highlighted here. Gasoline is a high volatile fuel. It's a low reactive fuel. On the other hand, diesel is a low volatility fuel. It is a high reactivity fuel. I will give more information about this reactivity and volatility as we move on. These are some of the important or fundamental fuel characteristics that we need to understand from the combustion perspective. Sorry. So any idea about what is volatility of a fuel?
If we leave it into the atmosphere, sir, how quickly it get vaporized in that way?
Yes. So when you take your motorcycle to a pumping station, as soon as you open the tank, petrol tank, you would have felt the fuel smell, right?
Right.
Yes, sir. Correct, sir. Due to vaporization.
So this is what I mean by volatility. Right. So as soon as you open the fuel tank, you will feel the smell of gasoline. This is what I mean by highly volatile. Why? Because this volatility is nothing but boiling range. Gasoline has a boiling range of 20 to 200 degrees Celsius. You have a range. It is not one value. It is in a range. Why it is in a range?
Because of other mixing, like what I mean to say is E10 fuel, E20 fuel, or maybe octane value, 92 octane value fuel, 98 octane value fuel, like that.
You are saying that the
maybe
is mixed with some other additive.
Right, sir. Right.
maybe it is a mixture of different.
Flash point is different, sir.
Sorry.
Sir, maybe it is a mixture of different hydrocarbons. So different hydrocarbons might have some different.
Yeah. Yes. Perfect.
Combustion. Yes.
Yeah. So both the answers are correct, but the primary thing here is gasoline is not a single component fuel. It's a multi-component fuel. It's a mixture of hydrocarbon, and these different hydrocarbons have different boiling temperature. Okay. That's why you have a range. It's not one value. It's a range because it's a mixture, multi-component mixture. So gasoline has a boiling range of 20 degree to 200 degrees Celsius because it's a mixture, multi-component mixture. Okay, and it is a highly volatile fuel. You could see that the lower end you have 20 degree. Surrounding ambient temperature can very well be above 30 degree. Okay, that's why when you open the fuel tank, this low boiling hydrocarbon immediately evolve out of your fuel tank. That is what you are smelling. So here you should note that some of the hydrocarbons are carcinogenic. I will give more information about molecular composition and molecular structure as we move on. My suggestion from the perspective of fuel is some of the hydrocarbons are carcinogenic. What is carcinogenic? They can cause cancer. So this hydrocarbon should not be inhaled. Okay, should not be inhaled because they have a potential to cause cancer. So these hydrocarbons are highly volatile, especially gasoline or petrol, because they have a low boiling range of 20 degrees Celsius. This low boiling hydrocarbon will evolve out of your fuel tank as soon as you open it. So that's what you are smelling it actually. So you have to ensure that you are not taking in more of these vapors, right? Because this vapor should not go and get deposited in the lungs. Later on, I will introduce more about this fuel composition, also about the pollutants, okay, as we move on in this course. But here, just take a note that from the fuel characteristic perspective, this gasoline is a high volatile fuel because it's a wide range hydrocarbon, and some of them are low boiling range 20 degrees. So its ability to vaporize is so quick. This is what I mean by volatility. You know that combustion is a gas phase phenomena, and we introduce liquid phase fuel into our engine. This liquid phase fuel has to be converted to gas phase as quickly as possible. So high volatility is better from that perspective. It quickly vaporizes and gets into gas phase. And other important characteristic is reactivity. Reactivity is the ability of the fuel to ignite. Gasoline won't ignite quickly. This is what I mean by low reactivity. Okay, why so? We will get more information as we move on. Okay, so but here just take a note that the characteristic of a fuel is going to affect performance and emission. From that perspective, we use gasoline, which is a high volatile and low reactivity fuel in spark ignited engine. On the other hand, we use diesel in compression ignited engine, which is low volatile because its boiling range is high. It starts with 160 degrees Celsius. 160 degrees Celsius to 380 degrees Celsius. This is a typical boiling range of diesel fuel. So you don't vaporize quickly. So diesel, that's what I mean by low volatility. Okay, diesel is a low volatile fuel. On the other hand, it's highly reactive, meaning it can ignite quickly, unlike gasoline. Okay, so you could see here that the characteristic of these two fuel that we use in these two IC engine variants are just opposite. One
Sir,
is
sir,
yeah.
sir, one clarification, sir. Sir, this boiling point or the temperature range will be differing for every byproduct of the crude oil, correct, sir? So it is irrespective of gasoline or diesel oil, every type of byproducts will have a variation in the boiling points and flash and fire points, correct, sir?
Exactly. So it's going to vary, but doesn't vary much. I'm going to give
sir,
more
within that
information
range.
about. It doesn't vary much. It's a typical number I have given, but generally it will be in this range. Boiling range will be generally of this. Okay. So as you rightly said, this is going to be different based on the crude oil that we have. Later on, I will introduce and show you how the variation in crude oil vary the gasoline and diesel properties. In different parts of the world, the crude oil available is different. and accordingly the gasoline and diesel characteristics are going to be slightly different, but not too much. Later on I will show, especially boiling range doesn't vary too much, whereas reactivity varies significantly. Okay, so this is going to vary significantly based on the crude oil source. But you are right, these fuels are multi-component fuel. Because of that, it's very difficult to maintain identical fuel characteristic, which is not the case with single component. If you have only one component fuel, the fuel characteristics are fixed. Whereas in a multi-component fuel, there will be variation in the component, and any variation in the fuel component or molecular composition is going to affect its characteristic.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir, and one more thing, sir, regarding this reactivity. So the low reactivity of gasoline is because the molecules are not densely packed, which is the opposite of diesel. Diesel, it's quite densely packed. That's why the volatility is low and the reactivity is high. Is the
No,
understanding
it is not like that. It is primarily because of molecular structure of the component. Later on, I'm going to introduce that in this course, in the first chapter. Okay, that is one of the important thing that you need to understand from combustion perspective. Gasoline is low reactive because it is composed of hydrocarbon which are having a very stable molecular structure. Whereas diesel is highly reactive, meaning it can readily ignite and combust because of the hydrocarbon molecular structure. They can readily ignite, right? So it's primarily based on the differences in the molecular structure that we will discuss as we move on.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Fine. So, so the point here, takeaway for you is engine performance and pollutant formation is dependent on these 4 factors. Among this, our focus in this first chapter is on fuel type. So we are going to see how the variations in fuel characteristic affect the combustion phenomena, right? And here you should note that based on the combustion phenomena, the performance and pollutants are dependent on the pollutant level in the engine tailpipe, and the performance of the engine is primarily dependent on how we are controlling the combustion process, as I introduced in the previous class, right? So we are in the first module, we are going to discuss about the combustion phenomena in the 2 engine, primarily with the focus of understanding the factors that help us to control the combustion. We need to control, we want a progressive or controlled combustion so as to improve the performance and pollutant formation. If you have uncontrolled combustion like a bomb blast, okay, so it is of no use. Thermal energy released in without any time, you cannot recover or you cannot convert the thermal energy into useful work. So we want a progressive combustion, we want a more controlled combustion. That is what is going to improve the performance of the engine. Okay, it also decides the concentration of pollutants that are emitted from the engine. Okay, so what I am saying you here is the combustion process is central to engine performance and pollutant formation, and which are dependent on these 4 factors. So here I have provided an overview of combustion process. Okay, so in an internal combustion engine, fuel and air react, form various products, right? Out of these various products, some of them are designated as pollutants. So you know, IC engines and IC engine powered vehicle, when it moves on a road, the combustion phenomena releases various species into surrounding ambience. This is where the objection is coming in, because these species are released into surrounding ambient, and these species are nothing but products of combustion. Some of these species, right? Not some of these, 4 of the species are designated as criteria pollutants. What are those? Unburned hydrocarbon, carbon monoxide, oxides of nitrogen, particulate matter. We are going to discuss in detail about these 4 species in the second module. These are pollutants that are emitted due to the combustion event that takes place in the engine. Okay, so our focus is on these 4 species because these are called criteria pollutants or regulated pollutants. Because they are going to create health effects to the human being. Okay, they have immediate effect as well as long-term effect, these 4 species. That's why we need to closely keep a check on these 4 species, right, emitted from internal combustion engine. And this is where the objection is coming into IC engine powered vehicle. And we today talk more about EV, electric vehicle, primarily because this combustion-based propulsion systems are emitting objectionable pollutants into surrounding ambience. Okay, so fuel and air combust and form various products. Okay, and some of these products are pollutants. The primary interest in this combustion event is the heat that is liberated by the engine. Why this combustion phenomena releases heat? Because it's an exothermic reaction. It's a chemical reaction, exothermic in nature, and because of exothermic nature, it releases thermal energy. Okay, what is the other category of chemical reaction? One is exothermic.
Endothermic.
Exactly, endothermic. So you have two categories of chemical reaction, exothermic and endothermic. Endothermic is just opposite to exothermic. It absorbs thermal energy. Any endothermic reaction absorbs thermal energy. Exothermic reaction releases thermal energy. Combustion is exothermic. Because of that, it releases thermal energy. What we do with this thermal energy in IC engine? IC engine is the energy conversion device. We are utilizing this thermal energy in the IC engine. We are timing the energy release appropriately through our system, IC engine system, and we convert that into mechanical work. Thermal energy that is released during combustion is converted into mechanical work. This is where our interest is to study about the combustion phenomena, because this exothermic reaction releases thermal energy and we are converting that into mechanical work in this energy conversion device, IC engine. What is the source for this thermal energy release? As some of you said, it's chemical energy. Chemical energy, fuel as such possesses chemical energy. Can we refine it further? What is chemical energy of the fuel?
Calorific value, sir.
Calorific value. Okay. It's a property. Anything else? When you think of chemical energy of a fuel, what is that the fuel possesses?
Potential energy of the chemical bonds.
Potential energy of the chemical bonds. Okay. What is a more refined terminology? Chemical bond.
Hydrocarbons, sir.
Okay, so the fuel that we use in an internal combustion engine are hydrocarbon fuel because they contain primarily carbon and hydrogen. What is the typical proportion of carbon and hydrogen?
C2H5 probably, sir. Like two molecules of carbon.
What is the percentage of carbon? What is the percentage of hydrogen?
Percentage you have told, sir, around 92%.
92.
87,
87, sorry. Yes.
Exactly, 84. The fuel, gasoline and diesel, consists of around 84% carbon, around 14% hydrogen. The rest are trace elements. Trace elements are nitrogen, sulfur. Today we use ultra low sulfur diesel. It's in ppm level, 50 ppm or 10 ppm, around that number. That's why you say ultra low sulfur diesel, because sulfur is causing some pollutant. I will talk more about it later on. So the primary elements are carbon and hydrogen. This is what we have in the fuel, and that's why they are designated as hydrocarbon fuel. They contain hydrogen and carbon, 84 and 14%. Okay, so the source, energy source is fuel. Fuel as such possesses energy. This hydrocarbon fuel as such possesses energy in the form of bonds, as some of you rightly said. So when you look at more closely about this individual hydrocarbon, it's a multi-component mixture. You have different hydrocarbon. Fuel is composed of different hydrocarbon. If you take one hydrocarbon, typically it consists of carbon and hydrogen, which are connected as I have shown here. This is the typical molecular structure. Carbon you have, and this is connected with the hydrogen atom. So carbon and hydrogen are connected typically through this. So this is a compound, right? So when you look at more close, this is a hydrogen or element, and they form a compound. So if you have to form a compound from an element, there is some energy already spent. What is that energy? To form a compound from an element, there is some energy that is already spent. What is that energy?
That is a potential energy, sir.
Have you come across this term, enthalpy of formation?
Yes.
Enthalpy of formation, sir.
Yes, enthalpy of formation. So To form a compound from an element, carbon and hydrogen are elements. So we are talking about hydrocarbon fuel.
Not able to get.
Sorry.
Sorry, sir. No, I was talking here.
Yeah. Can you please close the mic if you are not talking? Okay, so we are talking about hydrocarbon fuel. Carbon and hydrogen are connected through these bonds. Okay, and to form a compound from an element, there is some energy that is already spent. You know, energy cannot be created, right? That is law of conservation of energy. Energy cannot be created, but one form of energy can be converted into other form of energy. Now, to form a compound from an element, here we have hydrocarbon fuel, which consists of primarily carbon and hydrogen, which are elements. To form a compound from this element, some energy is that already spent. That energy is nothing but enthalpy of formation. During a combustion reaction, which is an exothermal reaction, this enthalpy of formation, this energy that the fuel possesses, the energy the fuel possesses is chemical energy, which is nothing but enthalpy of formation, which is how we quantify, right? You need to quantify when you do a research or analysis, right? So we quantify this energy in terms of enthalpy of formation of a compound from an element, and this energy the compound has is what is released during the combustion reaction, which is an exothermic reaction. That is how you get this thermal energy, heat release. Heat release is primarily from this. Now, whether this fuel readily undergo chemical reaction, no, this is very stable. The fuel consists of a stable molecular structure. What we have to provide to release thermal energy or to start combustion even is we need to break the stable hydrocarbon molecules which are connected through bonds. Okay, we need to break it and form something called a radical. Radicals are nothing but active species, active chemical species, or in other words, is highly unstable. Highly unstable. Anything unstable will try to reach stable state as quickly as possible. That is how these radicals also move quickly and try to reach a stable state by reacting with other available species, and that is how a chemical reaction goes on, right? So from a microscopic perspective, what is happening during a combustion event is the stable molecular structure is broken down, right? And radicals are formed, which are active species. And once the radicals are formed, the combustion event will get started and thermal energy start to happen, start to be released. Okay, so one of the important aspect of this combustion event is it's a self-sustaining process. The combustion event is self-sustaining. Once it gets started, it will go on its own. It will go on its own. So the combustion event will continue to happen on its own. No need to do anything. Once it gets started, it will continue to happen on its own until sufficient radicals are available. As long as sufficient radicals are available, the combustion event will continue to happen. Chemical reaction happen. Thermal energy will continue to get released. Okay, but the fuel as such won't undergo combustion easily, right? There are several processes involved. I will talk about that as we move on. The takeaway for you is you have to initiate the radical formation, right? How do we do that? What energy you provide to start formation of radical? Only if the radicals are formed, the ignition happen, the combustion will get started. Once the combustion gets started, it will continue to go on its own. That's why I say that it's a self-sustaining process. It will continue on its own once it gets started. Okay, but you need to initiate the combustion event. How do we initiate the combustion event in a typical spark ignited engine? How the ignition happens?
Spark, sir. Spark through spark plug.
So what you do in a typical spark ignited engine, you are initiating combustion event by spark discharge. So you discharge an electric spark, high voltage electric spark. By doing this, you are initiating the radical formation. So the energy that you provide to the fuel to form radical is called activation energy. So you are providing activation energy to break stable molecular structure and form radical. Okay, in a typical spark ignited engine, you do this by discharging electric spark. That is how the combustion event will get started. Once it gets started, as I said, no need to do anything. The reaction will go on its own because it's a self-sustaining process. Thermal energy will continue to get released. and you are converting that into work in IC engine. How do you provide activation energy in a CI engine, compression ignited engine?
By compressing the fuel to the flash point.
By compressing the air, sir, and by atomizing and injecting the fuel, sir.
Yes. So you are compressing air alone, and then later you are introducing fuel into cylinder into compressed air. So compressed air act as a activation energy source. Through compressed air, when you inject fuel into compressed air, which is already at a higher pressure and higher temperature, the fuel will start to break down, start to form radical. That is how ignition happens. That's why this category of engines are classified as compression ignited engine. The required activation energy is provided through compression event. That is why it is called compression ignited. In a spark ignited engine, the required activation energy is provided through spark discharge. That is why it is categorized as spark ignition engine. So you have these two variants. What you do is you are initiating the combustion process in a different way. In a SI engine, you do spark discharge. In a CI engine, you compress it to a very high pressure and temperature, introduce fuel into that high pressure, high temperature air. This compression is possible because of higher compression ratio that you maintain in a CI engine, which is much higher. It's almost twice compared to SI engine. Okay, because the ignition source for CI engine is compressed air. That's why you maintain a high compression ratio in a CI engine so as to initiate the combustion event. Once you initiate the combustion event, the process will go on its own, release thermal energy, and you are converting that into work. Okay, and the more important thing is the fuel is combusting with air. Okay, and you know air consists of primarily oxygen and nitrogen. In what proportion? What is
72, 14, and the rest of it.
Okay, 72 and 14.
Yes, sir.
23.
23. 23 what?
Oxygen.
Oxygen.
Yes. 27, I think.
27. Okay.
87.
80, 27.
Air has 21%, sir, of oxygen.
21. And nitrogen 79. Okay. Nitrogen 78. And generally we consider for analysis, we will take it as 79. There are trace element. We absorb all the trace element or inert species in nitrogen because nitrogen is an inert species. Inert means it won't, it is not reactive. That is what I mean by inert species. This is on volume basis. Some of you said 23 oxygen, 23% oxygen. That is on mass basis. On volume basis, it is 21% oxygen, 79% nitrogen. Okay, and actually nitrogen is around 78. Remaining 1% are trace elements like argon, CO2, and so on. All those are inert species. We generally absorb all these species in nitrogen and say 79% nitrogen and 21% oxygen on volume basis. So fuel combust with air. What you want is fuel cannot ignite by itself. You need air. In air, what we want is oxygen. Right? Nitrogen is an inert species. The combustion event, for combustion event, you need oxygen. Right? My question to you is why can't we use pure oxygen? Why do we use air in our IC engine? What you want for combustion is oxygen. You don't want nitrogen. In fact, nitrogen is creating a pollutant, one of the pollutant, right? The source for NOx, oxides of nitrogen, is nitrogen present in air. If you use oxygen instead of air, you are actually getting rid of NOx. NOx will be safe.
To control the combustion, sir. Combustion, yes, sir. Controlled combustion, we need.
Controlled combustion, you need air. How nitrogen present in air control combustion?
So basically what happens is when the ignition starts, then the chemical composition of the mixture is changing, and hence the calorific value, the dynamic calorific value of the mixture is changing. So if we have the pure oxygen, then the heat capacity of the fuel mixture is so high that it might explode also in that way. But while nitrogen is there, it is bringing down the calorific value to a value where the combustion can be self-sustainable, and it will not create a situation like exploding things. That is my
To
understanding.
some extent, I agree with you, but
It's expensive,
It's
sir.
because nitrogen
expensive.
oxidizes and it consumes the excess oxygen in the.
Okay. Okay, there are, so some of these things are fine, perfect, and some of this I want to correct. Calorific value you mentioned, right? Calorific value is a property. It won't change. Okay, any property is measured under control condition. Okay, it's a property of a fuel. When I say property, that is an inherent characteristic of the fuel. It won't change. Okay, what is happening? Why we want air instead of pure oxygen is there are two things, as some of you highlighted perfectly. One is it's expensive. Pure oxygen is expensive. Okay, the air is freely available. When like we breathe, we take air, right? Vehicle also breathe. Vehicle also takes in air when it moves on, right? So air is freely available. Like we take in air, vehicle also induct air into through the intake system, and that is what you need for combustion phenomena to happen in an IC engine. Okay, air is freely available. Oxygen, pure oxygen is expensive because you need to separate oxygen and nitrogen. It's an energy intensive and cost intensive process. It's expensive. That's why we use air. This is one of the most important reason. It's freely available. Second important reason from an engine design perspective is, as some of you highlighted, when you use pure oxygen, the temperature rise is going to be very high. So you will have a problem of durability of the engine, or otherwise you need to use high cost material when you design IC engine to withstand such a higher temperature. Nitrogen is inert. It puts a control, it puts a check on the max temperature reached by the system, combustion system. So it helps in increasing the durability of the system, combustion system. Air, the nitrogen present in air increases durability of the system, because there is no need to go for high cost material, expensive material when you design an engine. With the pure oxygen, to increase durability, you have to use high cost material, which is not required when you use air, which include nitrogen. It puts a check on maximum temperature reached by the system, combustion system. It helps in increasing the durability or life of the IC engine. You know, a typical vehicle lifetime is 10 years, right? This is one of the important reasons why IC engines are surviving for such a long period. It's almost 150 years. The first IC engine was invented. It still is there in the market, right? Today, although we talk a lot about EV, okay, I'll talk more about it later on as we move on, but IC engines are surviving. It's going to survive now almost 150 years. Okay, one of the reason is its durability is high, typically 10 years lifetime. Okay, so we have a durable combustion system, and air is playing a role in that. Okay, it increases the durability of the system because nitrogen puts the check on the max temperature reached by the combustion system. These two are the primary reason why we use air instead of pure oxygen. One is it's expensive. Second one, it puts a check on the max temperature reached by the combustion system. Thereby, it increases durability or life of the IC engine system.
Sir?
Yeah.
Sir, also pure oxygen is heavier than air, and also it affects the lubrication of the liner and piston rings.
Yeah, there are associated problems, definitely. It will go on. Okay, so there are from all possible aspects, we don't want to use pure oxygen. So you have to store it, right? I will talk more about the problems with storage of gas in IC engine system later on as we move on. Okay, but it has all other associated problems. I have highlighted two primary reasons why we use air instead of oxygen. Clear?
Right, sir.
Okay, so
Yes,
it's time up. I am stopping here. If you have any questions, I can take your question.
Sir, regarding this reactivity, so as you mentioned, sir, the introduction of the radicals is what defines the reactivity, correct? So, if it is highly reactive, that means the molecules can be like reacted by these radicals easily. Is that correct, sir?
When I say highly reactive, it means the radical forming tendency is higher. It can quickly form radical, meaning it will get into ignition quickly. When I say low reactivity, it won't ignite readily. It won't form radicals quickly.
Because of the stability of the hydrocarbon chain.
Because of the stability of the molecular structure.
Okay, sir. Okay, clear, sir. Thank you, sir.
Fine.
Sir, can you hear me, sir?
Yes.
Some of the people are joined just 2-3 minutes after you are taking the attendance, sir.
Okay. Who are they? I'll include them in the attendance. Who are they?
Yuvraj, sir.
So I will read out the name. Anand Kumar. Hasan.
No, sir.
Hemant.
Present, sir.
Present, sir.
Prabhakaran.
Yes, sir.
Rahul.
Present, sir.
Hassan present, sir.
Yes, sir.
One second. Hasan present.
Yeah, present, sir.
Okay. Prabhakaran.
Present, sir, is
Raising the hand is mic is problem, sir.
Mic is not working. Okay, fine. And then Rahul.
Yes, sir. Present.
Rahul and Vigneshwaran.
Sir, present, sir.
Vivekanand.
Present, sir.
Yuvraj.
Present, sir.
Okay. So the one who is not answered is Anand Kumar.
Yes, sir.
So except Anand Kumar, all others are present today.
Yes, sir.
Fine. Okay. If there are no questions, I will meet you tomorrow at 6 o'clock. Thank
Right,
you.
sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.